Hello one and all, and welcome to another RWBY discussion. I'm your only mate, and with me as always is...
MaxN'Mate Trades, are you ready for sad? This episode is sad.
Yeah, I mean... I got a couple nice things.
I don't really got a lot. I'm gonna be honest with you. There is not a lot of positivity to be found in this episode. It's just, it's what we in the business sometimes refer to as a total bummer.
Yeah, kind of.
But you know, we've got lots of theorizing we can give you guys, and I don't know, maybe we'll find some way to make some fun happen in this. I don't know, but it's I guess we'll get there piece by piece as we go forward. Is there anything you want to say before I guess we just get into this?
Nothing that's related.
All right then. Well, here's one nice thing. As the episode starts,
the girls finally get some sleep.
Yeah, they get some sleeps. That's nice.
Like yeah, since volume 7, like it's been days, and these girls haven't had the chance to nap.
Like, I honestly saw some people say, like, man, I don't know how they're able to sleep on the floor that well. It's just like, if you're tired enough, you can sleep anywhere. Like, my goodness. Of course, well, I mean, okay. Well, you know, Weiss be taking a nap, she be looking good, very good, very good. And, you know, you got your sleeping girls, and what's interesting about that?
Oh, like, okay, everyone has, like, all their, like, mats on the floor.
Yeah.
Blake and Yang's are, like, together.
Yeah, they put theirs together so they could nap together, and that's nice.
Yeah.
Now to dive bomb quickly into sadness. RWBY didn't sleep at all.
No, and she's just kind of staring at Crescent Rose.
Very conflicted. And then something explodes.
Which that's one hell of an alarm clock.
It very much is. Also, I'm going to be pointing out, you know, animation quirks, like, this entire thing, because I've watched this episode, like, 4 times all the way through, and just to watch all the different animations and for all the characters and stuff. And one of the many, many little things that I appreciate is just how, like, very clearly, like, groggily sleepy Blake, Yang, and Weiss are, but RWBY's just completely wide awake already.
Yeah, I also noticed when, like, Jaune, like, runs over them, well, and jumps over Weiss.
Yeah, my exact quote when I saw that was, "Please do not leap over the Weiss. It is rude."
Yeah, like, Weiss puts an arm up to, like, you know, just in case.
Brace yourself, yeah. Yeah, just in case.
Yang tries to roll out of the way. Blake kind of doesn't really do much.
Well, she's not in the way in any capacity. The odds of Jaune bumping into her in any way are, like, very slim. Look, once Blake is the one getting jumped over, then she can react to it.
Oh, RWBY doesn't really move either.
Yeah, but she's also more alert. Imagine waking up to somebody you know jumping over your head. Regardless, Jaune springs awake. Yeah, he springs awake, and the town that they're chilling at is on fire, and that is a problem.
Yeah, all the while Jaune is talking about how, like, he's late. He's always on time. And how, like,
believe it or not,
he always does this.
Yeah, believe it or not, I actually have something to say about that particular line. It's more relevant later, but just remember what he said when this episode started, and I'll come back to it later.
Okay.
Yes, the RWBY gals are admittedly confused, but alright, whatever. The town is on fire. Let's do something about that.
Yeah, and even more stuff is exploding as Jaune rides Juniper off to save the day.
The noble steed. And RWBY does not have her weapon.
And it's... Yeah, it's...
Yeah, she tries to play it off like it's just because she's tired, but... Anyway. Very small blink and you miss it moment, but if you actually pay really super close attention, when RWBY runs off to grab Crescent Rose, you actually see her, like stick her arm out so Little can jump back up on top of her. Like, I didn't notice that the first time.
Yeah,
It's just nice.
Good detail. And okay, this shot when Team RWBY like run into the town, I'm gonna be calling back to this because it leads into a thought of mine for the end of the episode.
Okie dokie, that is concerning. Everything about this episode is concerning.
But yeah, town's on fire, and
the main problem was, normally a town being on fire is already a problem, but this town is made out of paper, which is obviously even more of an issue.
Yeah, and what's also made out of paper are its inhabitants. These
little tiny little starfish dudes.
Yeah, okay, we find out later they're called the Paper Pleasers.
Yes. And one kind of just happily waddles up and says, "Hello there. Tell me what you are so that I can help you." And RWBY and Weiss react very accordingly. It's like, honestly, a very solid reaction image from Weiss on this one. It's like, your town is on fire. Like, you just replaced your town with just about anything. It's like, it's on fire. Be more concerned.
Yeah, but this Paper Pleaser's like, oh, we have our hero.
Yeah. And Jaune comes in with a water bucket. Ka-splash.
I feel like these Paper Pleasers would get along well with the people of Metropolis.
Indeed. It's like, we don't have to feel emotions or worry or dread. We've got somebody who solves all our problems for us.
Basically. Well, Jaune needs is a red cape.
Yeah, and then they're all like, "Yay for the hero!" But no, he has to cut them off. It's like, you're gonna get dissolved in the water, you derpy little dork. So as it turns out, Jaune explains that, RWBY asked if fires happen often in this town, and he says they happen every day.
Yeah.
Jaune has apparently taken up residency in the town of the Paper Pleasers, because when Alex left him to die, they're the ones who helped him. So he's basically dedicated years of his life, possibly decade, basically defending them, mostly from themselves, because they are very, very prone to dying. But, they basically just kind of, they go around and they just help anybody and everyone because apparently, that's their purpose. And, they're very nice. They're dumb as hell, but they're nice.
Yeah. But as Jaune says, it also makes them predictable. And he just nonchalantly catches one that was getting blown away by the breeze. Mm-hmm. Doesn't even look like...
Yeah, no,
he's so used to it, he knows what's about to happen.
Yeah, as we learn a little bit from now, the Paper Pleasers are very consistent when it comes to their emergencies. Because I guess the exact same things happen every single time. It's like a Groundhog's Day loop, but intentional, and it's very bizarre.
Yeah, and I think when I was watching the roundtable, they mentioned Groundhog Day for this thing with Jaune.
As a direct inspiration, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, this is a deliberate Groundhog's Day situation.
And the one he caught walks off, and Jaune's all, classic Ren.
Weiss, naturally mildly concerned by that, asks, "You named them after your teammates?" And Jaune, realizing that maybe that seems a little strange, sidesteps and says, "No, I named them after everyone." And the one that is named RWBY introduces itself, and boy howdy, are the girls deeply uncomfortable about this.
I love Blake's face the most. It's just like...
Yeah, no, Blake is the most incredibly unsettled by this entire thing.
It's just like... I saw a comment, it's just like, she's read a story like Castaway.
Yeah, I was literally about to ask you if you'd ever seen or heard of the movie Castaway.
Heard of it, never
just
seen
because... Oh, you never seen it, but you know the general idea.
Yeah.
A guy is lonely for a very long period of time and makes friends with a volleyball, basically. That he, instills a name and personality to. While the Paper Pleasers are more sentient than Wilson the volleyball, not by as much as it would be required for this to not be deeply unsettling.
Yeah, so Blake especially knows how much of a red flag this is.
Yeah. But I do appreciate Yang not even pretending to be okay with it. Hate that.
Ugh.
Don't want. Do not want.
Yeah. And then Jaune's saying, well, we got some time before the tower collapses, destroys the dam, and floods this place, so... brunch?
Yeah. Man, I love the faces on the girls that are like, oh no. Oh no, Jaune. And oh no, Jaune is going to be a very recurring sentiment throughout the rest of this episode.
Kinda. And, before we get that, though, Jaune's made himself a map.
He did, and we can actually take a little a look at the map.
Right,
and
so Hunter Mice, the first acre, then Crimson Castle.
Yeah,
Garden.
they've been there. They went to the garden, and now they're at the Paper Pleasers.
Yep. And it looks like not all the acres are like connected, but we've also got Cake Acre or Caker.
I don't know what possessed him to do that, but good on you, my guy.
You know he wrote that and was like, "Nice work, brain. You're welcome."
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, oh no, my brain's talking to me. Anywho.
Farming Flats, Blob.
I really want to know about Blob. Almost as much as I want to know about the Stinky Cheese Acre, apparently.
There's also Green Chapel. Swan Lake, Volcano.
Yeah. And whatever that is. I'm guessing maybe specifically where the Jabberwocker is expected to be, maybe? I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, no, that's just the Jabberwocker that you drew.
Yeah.
So that's got to be the acre where Neo landed.
Yeah, that's that would make sense. It would also, because then it would explain how she was able to get to the places despite her late fall. The distance weren't that bad. But yeah, no, Jaune basically says that this is basically just kind of what his life has been, and what his general plan has basically just kind of been to explore the different areas and try to find something or anybody that could possibly get them all home. When Weiss posits, all right, cool. So what have you found? And Jaune says, nothing, really. Which is not good.
Yeah, although, okay, so he's talking about how, like, you know, he's keeping the village safe, and we find out his very, very tight schedule.
Right. Well, we'll talk about that in just a sec, but yeah, he shows a brief sign of small, like, I don't know if I would call it resentment or what, but it's just like, hey, yeah, I know I didn't solve all of our problems, but you know, I have to save this town. It's what I do. It's my thing. And in his mind, it makes sense to him, even though it really doesn't the more we learn. But yeah, his schedule. Let's talk about the schedule.
Yeah, I kind of want to just read it out because there's some fun things in there.
Well, there are some fun things and some extraordinarily, very darkly unfunny things that can be found in it.
Yeah.
But hey, yeah, go ahead, please, go ahead.
I'm also just letting the scene play out until he pulls out.
Yeah,
okay.
I paused on the first frame of when he's pulled the whole thing out.
Okay. So there's the first fire. Save the residents from the first fire. Brunch.
Yes.
Patrol the town, checking on individual paper pleasers. Stop the pebble tower from toppling. Secure the dam. Save Ren from falling into the koi pond. Watch for terrible twos.
Yeah, whatever that could mean.
Keep away from Shredder.
Which either means that the Ninja Turtles villain is running around, or there's a giant paper shredder somewhere in this place. Both are incredibly concerning.
I was trying to come up with a TMNT joke.
Yeah, it's like, just keep away from Shredder. Dude's very dangerous and pointy.
I was also gonna say, well, unfortunately, Jaune doesn't have a team of turtles who don't cut him no slack.
Exactly. If any traveling salesmen or traders come through, check for hazardous goods. If you wouldn't give it to a baby, don't give it to the paper pleasers. Like, my goodness. Help with the daily construction or beautifying projects so they don't get hurt.
Okay, but what about the Dust Ox projects? You get it?
I do not.
Beautifly.
Shut up! Oh. Man, to hell with you and all you stand for. Anyway, apparently there was no more fried foods, too much grease. Tea shop fiasco, stopped the second fire, saved the paper people pleasers from the I keep calling them paper people, from the residual water from the second fire.
Check in on sandpaper knife shop.
Yeah, that's an interesting business practice, but okie dokie.
I love this one. Help rake the sand. You'd be surprised how dangerous it can be.
You know, I mean, like, Sideshow Bob knows that rakes are dangerous.
I can't do the grumble.
You did it well enough for it to be identifiable, and that's good enough.
Fair enough. Keep Oscar away from anything that can be used as kite string.
One of, if perhaps maybe not the single best one on the entirety of this list.
Stop the goose.
I need the context on that. I really do.
Repair scarecrows in the rice fields. If late, fight off what giant crows. Make new scarecrow. Ruby will help.
I don't know how intentional this addition to this was, but that's actually gonna come up later.
Yeah, and also crows, Ruby.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it works for a few reasons.
Stop carts from crashing into East Marketplace. Stop the coffee maker at the cafe before it explodes. A lot of explosions happen here.
Apparently. This one's kind of cut off. Something about paper indoors. Get the paper people indoors before the daily wind surge. Stop Nora from climbing Pebble Tower during the storm. Trust me, this one ends poorly. Sad face. Take the scissors from Neptune. Stop the quote-unquote bandits. Curious about that one.
Yeah.
All right.
Stop the third and final, hopefully, fire.
Yeah. This next one I have a lot to say about, but we'll just read it for now.
Help Puro with her homework. Smiley face.
Yeah. Yes.
Though it could also be housework.
It could, but I feel like considering the babyisms of these creatures, homework makes more sense.
I guess.
Either way, I've got stuff to say about that one.
Stop the unfolding. You'll know when you see it.
Yeah.
Take away the makeshift lightning rods during the storm. Get paper pleasers to bed. Final rounds. Find a way home.
Basically, Jaune does not have a lot of free time. He's basically constructed an overly elaborate coping mechanism to try and hopefully keep some semblance of his sanity left by doing this incredibly repetitive thing. Apparently, this exact sequence of events happens every single day.
Yeah, and he just wants to save someone.
Yeah, that's sort of the thing.
And
the RWBY girls, after they look it over, they're not exactly impressed. RWBY especially. I wonder why. Maybe we'll talk about that later. Oh boy.
And I know people have brought this up. This has ironwood flags all over it.
Yeah. Basically, Jaune created a small little ecosystem for himself where he can micromanage and control literally every single aspect of a group of beings' lives to be exactly the way he wants it to be, all under the visage of protecting them. Beginning to think that RWBY have a problem with beards, if I'm being honest.
Unless you're Gira.
Gira is the exception to a lot of rules in RWBY, now that I really think about it, but that's for another day. Yeah, so in case you weren't already mildly concerned about all of the things that are going on, Jaune very aggressively punches the table and has to steel himself by saying that he's not crazy. The reaction of Weiss and Little tell it a very different tale.
Yeah,
But he composes himself and says that no, it's not crazy. It's a good plan. I've learned that patience is a good thing. It's why we're all together again, and it's all gonna work out just fine. And then he springs back up into cheerful mode. He's like, I'll just show you guys around, and you'll see some of the derpier paper pleasers you gotta help. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Girls are not impressed.
We kind of glossed over this. Like, Jaune's plan is basically just have the RWBY girls look after the village while he rides Jaune around to have better success with hopefully finding a way home.
Right, but
Which,
as the girls are very quick to point out, isn't a very good plan.
I mean, in the sense of, like, he can get around fast.
He can, yes, but this is obviously unhealthy. He's basically signing them up to be babysitters.
Kind of, and sorry, I got a laugh at something that people have pointed out about this moment when Yang's holding up the list, and Blake puts a hand on her arms, just like, "Hey, it's gonna be okay." Is this what it's gonna look like when they're doing their taxes or something?
Perhaps so. But before we transition to one concerning aspect, let's talk about a different concerning object. And one of the something that becomes immediately obvious is that the girls are definitely of the mind that Jaune has gone at least partially insane, and they're almost unsettlingly casual about it. Because Blake basically says, "Hey, look, we can worry about that later. Because no matter how you look at it, we need Jaune, and Jaune needs us. We just can't count on him." And I'm just like, "True, but ow."
Oh, even more Ironwood flags.
He was like, "Well, we need each other, even though we can't exactly count on him to not do something deeply unsettling at some point in the future." Haha! All while RWBY silently sieves in the corner.
Yeah, and before RWBY can say much,
little does it concern.
Yeah, and they do bring up how, like, the tree is out of the question because it'll kill us.
But they don't know that.
Yeah, we get this purple paper pleaser, which... Okay, let's be real. This is the one that's called Blake.
It has to be. It's purple.
Yeah. And Paper Blake is saying that, oh no, the tree doesn't kill, and we've been trying to tell him that. In fact, I don't want to be rude, but we've fulfilled our purpose long ago. Yeah. And basically,
the paper pleasers have just kind of been spinning their non-existent wheels for who knows how long, and have just kind of been casually waiting to die so that they can be reborn to do other things. But, Jaune's not too super into that idea.
Yeah. And, like, we see in flashbacks, like, they try to reach out to the tree, and we see those leaves that RWBY saw before going into the garden. And people have been like, wait, was the tree calling out to them too?
Maybe?
But Jaune's all like, nope, none of that.
And if you actually pay attention to this little storybook animatic thing, you'll notice that, like, in the first scene, like, his hair isn't as long, he doesn't have as much of a beard. So, like, yeah, no, he's been doing this a long time.
And then things get a bit darker when the paper pleasers start pulling out scissors and say, oh, we've tried to break from our physical forms.
Yeah, you don't need to be too much of an expert to figure out what that implies. Or the next scene where it's just two paper pleasers holding a metal rod running into a storm. Yeah, so basically, Jaune is kind of tampering with the natural order. because isn't good.
That's also close to Salem vibes now that I think about it.
A little bit. It's just, well, yeah. Anywho, the paper pleaser just kind of says we want to die and we want to move on. We want to do the whole cycle of rebirth. It's what we're supposed to be doing. And after majorly bumming out the majority of the girls, it's like, oh, don't worry. The smart ones are going to knock over the Pebble Tower. We're pretty sure it's going to work this time. Weiss asks how they can be sure, or what makes them so sure. And it responds, nothing, and waddles away. My goodness. But yeah, so the more you look at the kind of backdrop of the paper pleaser village, you'll notice that they've kind of taken to doing some very zen practices, like, you know, with the feeding of the koi ponds and the rock gardens, you know, all that stuff. Like, this place is very serene and peaceful, and it's kind of like a proto-heaven-ish type place. And Jaune is just kind of trying to take comfort in that and not lose it, because he loses a lot of things.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, so the girls kind of come to the conclusion that we should probably
maybe the tree is an option after all.
Yeah, because, well, Jaune just clearly isn't terribly reliable at this moment in time.
Yeah, and like, okay, when they say but the tree isn't death, and Weiss brings up, yeah, from a certain perspective, because if you think about it, like, if all your memories do get erased, that is borderline killing.
Kind of.
But
in a way,
really, in a sense.
Yeah, it's the death of self, but not the death of body.
Yeah.
So there's some ambiguity to the terminology, but I'd argue if you basically erase all the memories and experiences that someone has ever gone through and they start over fresh, they're basically a whole new person at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
You know, I am thinking back to the Curious Cat and saying, like, yeah, you're not afterans, so it's not gonna send you.
As far as they know.
Yeah, but I'm also thinking back again, it's just like, technically, I don't think the Curious Cat ever lied.
No, it's just telling it its truth and its thoughts and opinions and how it assumes things will go.
I mean,
there's no definitive answer.
Yeah,
I mean, that's part of what the girls are talking about. They don't actually know what will happen.
Yeah, they don't know what happened to Alex and Lewis.
So they don't know what would happen to them if they went to the tree. Maybe the afterins are right. I mean, at this point, that's kind of what they feel like they kind of have to go to, as Weiss accidentally earns the biggest foot and mouth award trophy for openly stating that Jaune is clearly not all there as he re-enters the room.
Ugh, yeah.
And Jaune immediately becomes 9 times more concerning than he already was.
Which causes a bit of an argument between him and the girls. And look, when Jaune says, why would you believe anything the cat told you? Blake does say, like, we're not listening to the cat, we're listening to the paper pleasers, the afterins.
Yeah. And very, very tellingly, despite the fact that we have established that Jaune clearly does have a very real fondness for these creatures, basically openly says that, well, the Everafterans, they don't know what they want. You've seen them, you've met them, you know that they're all either too stupid, too clever, or too untrustworthy to really bother with. Essentially calling the paper pleasers themselves and their entire existence and lives stupid and pointless. Kinda kind of losing himself in his own plot here.
A little bit.
It's also, so it's this weird mix of both humanizing them too much and also dehumanizing them. As it's concerning, is what it is. Blake asks, well, okay, if that's... I mean, not Blake, but why?
Weiss.
Like, yeah, Weiss, sorry. Basically says, well, if that's how you feel, then why are you even doing this? And Jaune lets it out, like, because he can actually protect these people. And that's literally the crux of all of this.
Yeah, but before that can be dwelled on, his house explodes.
It sure does.
Because Jabberwockers.
Jabberwockers are here. And, well, immediately, because we if there's a recurring theme in this volume, it's we don't have time to talk about our mental problems. We have action to go to take care of. As Jaune just immediately busts out and goes out to fight them. And the three non-Shaken members of Team RWBY are like, if the paper pleases get eaten, they don't get to ascend, so we should probably do something about that.
I do like Blake's, we won't run this time.
Yeah. And again, let's all just take special note of RWBY's exact specific physical reaction to this entire thing.
Yeah,
which,
she's reluctant to even go.
Yeah, it's like, as we learn... Okay, we'll get to it when we get to it. When the shoe drops, I'll bring up even more of this stuff. But yeah, we get ourselves a little brief action sequence, and it's rather nice.
Yeah, you got the Armagigas showing up and
helping out Jaune. It's always nice whenever the Armagigas shows up. I like that. You get some truly stupendous choreography and teamwork from your girls.
Oh, this is so cool. Just like... Okay, Blake and Yang have always been in, like, such great sync whenever they fight alongside each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll be honest, after the confession and kiss and, like, oh yeah, these two are a couple now, this hits, like, in a whole different way.
Yeah, because, no, they don't even need, like, the slightest bit of, like, verbal or non-verbal communication to know exactly what the other one is doing. They're just able to work in perfect tandem like one being. It's kinda insane. Which I guess is actually kind of, sort of, maybe even deliberately kind of, sort of, I'm not sure, like, mirrored by Jaune and Weiss's significantly more ramshackle attempts at teamwork. Like, they get the job done, but it's clearly, they're clearly not exactly on the same page as they fight.
No, they're not. Well, they also just never fight alongside each other, too.
I know, but I'm just saying I felt like these two fights are next to each other side by side to help emphasize how good of a connection that Blake and Yang have, is what I was trying to say. Yeah, so Weiss almost gets flung around, but she's able to catch herself on a glyph. Jaune loses his sword, she throws it back to him. Pretty epically backhands it with his shield. That was pretty neat. I liked that.
Yeah, that was cool. And you can see when Jaune looks back at RWBY,
she's just standing there.
Yeah, Jaune is not happy.
No, he's very not happy with the fact that RWBY is doing nothing, and as we see Yang get backhanded by a Jabberwocker into a faceplant, RWBY is having a panic attack.
Yeah, and a Jabberwocker comes at her from behind. She does use her semblance to get away, and at least Crescent Rose is in gun form.
Yeah, but she still does nothing. I have to ask you, on a personal level, have you ever had a panic attack? I feel like if you had one, you would know.
Well, thing is, I don't know entirely, but I want to say maybe.
See, I definitely have had one in my life, and let me tell you, basically the whole world just kind of becomes this very numb feeling. Like, yeah, obviously you breathe heavy, and your heartbeat goes way, way, way up, but sound feels farther away. Like your depth of perception with your eyesight, like it extends outward. all of your senses basically become significantly more faded and distant versions of themselves. And I can only describe a panic attack as feeling like you're about to die. It is not an experience I would wish upon just about anybody. It is horrible. So, let me tell you, when I say that RWBY is having a panic attack, she is most assuredly having one, and they got somebody who also had one to make sure that it was as convincing as possible.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that's not even getting into the Jabberwocker slowly descending upon her as she begins sweating. Another part of a panic attack, I'll have you know.
By the way, can we just...
You ready for some incredibly disturbing visual imagery?
Yeah, this shot when the Jabberwocker's head turns into cinders. Okay,
yeah.
I'm just gonna be honest, that's just unintentionally hilarious.
It would be funnier if it wasn't legitimately disturbing.
I mean, yeah, it's disturbing in the context, but when you just look at the image itself, it's just like... That looks so stupid.
Yeah, it does, but contextually, it's much more horrifying.
Yeah. Then it turns into Penny. And... Yeah, the Jabberwocker, like, has RWBY on the ground, and its head turns into Salem.
And RWBY has one of, by far, the single most disturbing emotional facial reactions I think this show has ever had. For a brief moment, you can literally see the veins in her eyeballs as she is freaking out. A part of this is definitely also, that can't be helping, is sleep deprivation, as you can also see on her eyes that she has, like, small bags under them. She has not slept, and she is very stressed out. Not a good combo.
And then we get even more horrifying images where the Jabberwocker's jaw, like, breaks, and we see its mouth open.
Yeah. Luckily, before RWBY can die horribly, her team is able to save her. That's good. Takes her a minute to even get back up, though.
You know, I missed this subtle detail, but after Blake drop kicks it, she, like, shadow clones out of the way for Yang to come in with that final punch.
Synergy. They make it work. But then, yeah, the last Jabberwocker breaks apart to reveal Neo. God, I hate Neo.
She does a little finger gun to RWBY, like, I'm gonna get you.
I'm gonna murder you. Just in case you ever think you're safe. You're not. I'll hunt you down to the ends of the earth and murder you. That's basically what Neo is saying right now.
And afterwards, Blake and Yang ponder, like, okay, that's more powerful than her usual stuff. Like, how did she get so much stronger?
Well, we both know the answer to that, but...
Plot.
Yeah. Neo is significantly stronger now because the plot needs her to be in order to make her a good enough threat for an end-of-volume villain.
I mean, basically, like, we get the symbolism behind the evolution, but, like...
Yeah. And, I mean, they established semblance evolution as a thing, and how it works, so it all lines up and is fine, but, like, that is specifically why she is just suddenly so much more powerful.
Yeah, and... Jaune picks up Crescent Rose to, yell at RWBY,
berate her a bit.
She doesn't even take it, she just backs away and lets it fall to the ground.
Yeah, which, look, every now and then the team showed a little bit of concern for RWBY, but at this exact moment, they seem deeply unsettled by this.
As they should be, because...
That's her baby.
Yeah.
That's one of the most consistent character aspects of RWBY this entire series. She loves her weapon. She's gonna let it hit the ground like that? I don't think so. Yeah, Yang was gonna ask, are you okay? But before they even get the chance, yeah.
The Pebble Tower collapses, breaks the dam, and the Paper Village is flooded.
And if you watch Jaune as he runs towards the village, you can actually see on his face, his blood literally running cold. Man is horrified by this.
I mean, yeah, that was his coping mechanism.
Yeah, this is this is what he's been doing for at least a decade at this point. He's been saving them every single day because it's what he needed. He wanted to be a hero. He wanted to actually be helpful, to actually be useful. But once again, it all just kind of washes away. Which, all right, well, first of all, to anybody who didn't get the symbolism of the fact that a hole in a fence ultimately leading to the destruction of an entire town, if they missed that part, you might recall this one time when a giant whale smashed through a giant part of a fence and unleashed a bunch of stuff into a town that ultimately led to its entire destruction. Kind of happened recently, actually. Yeah. We're experiencing a bit of a mini Atlas here right now. That's fun.
Yeah. And I mean, the girls do try to comfort Jaune and tell him, like, look, they're not dead. They'll be back. Like, they're just...
And, yeah.
Yeah, and, this is what they wanted.
Yeah, and, maybe this would have worked. But then, Weiss kind of nudges at RWBY. He's like, hey, right, RWBY? And,
This has been a long time coming.
One dam broke. How about another one? RWBY doesn't know why she's being asked this. And she ponders, is it because she's a leader? Is it because she's supposed to always have an answer? Because she doesn't.
Yeah, and it's just like, why does it always have to be her?
Mm-hmm. It's like, why can't anything ever be about her feelings, her thoughts? Why does she have to be the leader? Why does this have to be her life? But, basically, she, approaches Weiss. Weiss is deeply unsettled by this. And just basically says, hey, because RWBY says, well, I always have to be the positive one, the one who always comes up with the answers, the one who isn't going to screw everything up. She,
upon saying that, approaches Blake and Yang. Yang steps in front of Blake, and okay, there's multiple ways you can read into this.
I mean, no matter how you look at it, Blake is literally hiding behind Yang like an intimidated cat would.
Yeah, people are saying Yang is protecting Blake, out of instinct, understandably.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also you could see it as Yang. Okay, it's still saying it's protecting her, but wants RWBY, look, be mad at me, not her.
Yeah, that's essentially what this is kind of going towards. I don't know what you're about to yell at us about, but whatever it is, don't point it at her, essentially.
Yeah, as was theorized, last episode after their confession, RWBY has a go at the two of them, saying, oh, maybe we just have to get our feelings out. Good for you, by the way. We're all so happy for you.
Yeah. We were definitely right that there was going to be some resentment for that. And RWBY posits it's like, yeah.
Before anyone even gets this thought, because I've seen it go around, it might just be memeing. And
no, it's not memeing. It's not memeing. Because people in this fandom are literal ghouls.
No, RWBY is not a homophobe.
That's not what this is about. You're just an incredibly stupid person.
And yeah, I get there's the whole angle of just maybe she feels like she's losing her sister. No,
that's not what this is about. She's mad at them for being able to sort out their issues so easily and quasically enjoy their time here, while she has been a never-ending source of bundled nerves and anxieties that have gone full-on to burst at this point. It's like, oh, cool, you guys have been able to solve all your problems. That's fun, that's great. I can't do that. You're not helping me. I'm tired of this, all of this. Why does no one ever want to help me? And there is an argument to be had.
Yeah,
while Team RWBY haven't been doing everything they could possibly have been doing to help, RWBY out through this, you can't say that they haven't done nothing. It's almost like the world has been conspiring against the idea of letting them being able to help her.
Yeah, because, like, look, the girls have tried.
They did.
But...
like, Weiss tried to confront Ruby's feelings, and Ruby walked away. Or when Yang tries to ask her if she's okay, something immediately takes everyone's attention away from that. Some life-threatening issue, or something of that general ilk.
Or the fact that they were still 6 inches tall and, you know, getting them back to normal size was kind of a priority.
It was. And that folds literally into part of Ruby's problem. She asks, "Oh, I'm sorry, is this a bad time? Are we supposed to be mourning Jaune's fake friends?" And,
that was about over the line.
a little bit. See, here's the thing. Let's talk about RWBY for just a little bit before we switch over to a different thing. The main issue with RWBY right now is that, currently, she has no hope left in her body. She does not see a point in continuing any of this. She thinks that failure is entirely inevitable. Coming up with a plan or trying to figure things out has no point. It's why she reacted with such incredible disdain during Jaune's explanation about how he's been protecting this town. Without saying it, RWBY basically kind of gets the message across that, why are you doing this? This is stupid. It's going to inevitably all fall apart. You're wasting your time and your life. Just give up. And now that said event has in fact actually taken place, this just kind of solidifies it in her brain that, yeah, I was right. Everything we've ever done is pointless. Stop trying. And that's really depressing, seeing it from RWBY.
Yeah. And what's worse is there was a recent comic in which Yang talks about how, like, RWBY is, you know, always a positive one, always able to see the sunny side of things.
That's part of the underlying problem of this. One of the reasons why I imagine that Weiss, Blake, and Yang have been having as much trouble being able to recognize RWBY's struggles is that, well, quite frankly, from all of their perspectives, RWBY has always been basically a structural pillar for them, a thing that they can always lean on when they need help. They never... I mean, I'm sure they have, but not truly come to terms with the fact that maybe RWBY could also have issues that she needs help with. While there have been attempts at that, it can't be said that everything that they could have done has been done.
Yeah. I mean, so, that even goes as far back as Volume 2. Like, remember, there was that whole thing about why do we want to be huntresses? Like, the three of them had that mini crisis, but RWBY didn't. Exactly.
That's part of what instilled this ideology into the other girls. It's just RWBY is the positive beacon of light in our lives that we can look towards when we falter. Not realizing that without intentionally doing so, all three of them have kind of fantasizingly idolized her in a way that's unrealistic expectations to put on anybody. To quote one of the theme songs of this series at one point, there is a point when it bends and a point when it breaks, and which you just can't take it anymore. And it took RWBY a really long time to reach that point, but she has most assuredly gotten to that point.
And this happens.
You want to know what doesn't help somebody in the middle of an emotional breakdown?
Another person having an emotional breakdown.
Yeah. After basically RWBY just says that, you know, we're supposed to be mourning Jaune's, you know, stupid fake friends.
I will also add...
Yes?
When Jaune was with Alex, he said that to Alex, the world was basically make-believe to her, like none of it mattered. Especially after the Herbalist.
Right.
I think he's seen some of that in RWBY.
A little bit. And just before we get into the exact specifics of Jaune's rant, I think another aspect worth taking into this is the fact that whether Jaune personally admitted it to himself or not, the things he's about to say have probably been festering deep down inside of his brain and heart for many, many, many years at this point. He basically just kind of goes completely off on RWBY and saying that the town's destruction is literally entirely her fault because the Jabberwockers were coming after her because Neo hates her. And on top of everything else, the entire reason that they're in the Ever After at all is because of RWBY's plan completely falling through. And he ultimately concludes that, well, she's asking what about her? It's always been about her. And the face RWBY makes says everything. You can see so many different emotions in her face. She's obviously very upset that Jaune would say this to her because, quite frankly, this is literally the exact polar opposite thing that she really needed to hear right now. She already felt like everything was her fault. And that's another one of the emotions on there. She feels guilt because she thinks that this is all of her fault. Everything is. She's also clearly deeply mortified and depressed. It's just, God, the animators are too good. They're too good. I didn't even talk about the expressions Jaune has been making during his entire rant. You feel that rage, man. You feel it. Weiss attempts to stop Jaune from doing this, and to Jaune's credit, he does immediately, like in his eyes, you can see it, he kind of snaps back to reality for a moment, and he owns up to it. He knows that this isn't right, and that he isn't all right. But he also posits that he doesn't know how he's supposed to be. He's been alone for so long.
And because he was the only one who could protect this village, just like how on the bridge, he was the only one who could do it.
He gets so close to saying what happened.
I'll be honest, I was kind of just hoping he would say it at that point, because okay, it doesn't get said in this episode. We have 3 episodes left, and I'm just thinking, RWBY still has yet to find out. Oh my god. Like,
see, here's the thing. I get that, and I'm in such an interesting balancing act right now between wanting the drama and also, please God, no, please everybody calm down, because that's my natural state of being.
Same.
And I am 100% convinced that in their extraordinarily emotionally compromised states at this exact moment, had Jaune let that information slip that he is directly the reason why Penny is dead right now, RWBY would have attacked him, and he probably would have attacked back.
Yeah, probably.
And I don't know if I could have emotionally handled that. Because you just know the other 3 would try to break it up. Someone was going to get horribly hurt. No matter what, someone was going to get hurt bad.
Mm-hmm. Like, I can see, like, one of the girls trying to pull RWBY off of Jaune, and maybe she, like, inadvertently attacks them.
Yeah. It would have definitely happened. It's not good.
But...
And Jaune says something very important here. That, you know, on that bridge, as we literally watch a bridge dissolve in the water, that he has to live with that, what he did, forever, in here and back home. This is probably the reddest flag for Jaune's fate that we've had up to this point.
Crimson.
Jaune is never going to be the person that he used to be. Ever again.
After what he had to do, like, how could you expect that?
As he said himself, like, I don't know how you could expect him to be okay. And it's just, when you consider the fact that he so desperately wants to be a hero just once, not screw up. And after all of this, even if he did get back home, he's been in the Ever After at the very least as long, if not longer, than all of the time he ever spent in Remnant. He's never going to have a normal life, no matter what. I don't want Jaune to die. I really, really don't. But narratively, it's just too telegraphed and perfect for me to see any other option. It really, really sucks, but it feels like inevitability.
Yeah, kind of.
Even though the episode's almost over, we still have a lot of things I want to talk about, but Blake does her best. Says, things have been bad, but...
And
yeah.
I hate this moment.
Yeah.
RWBY just says, shut up.
And if you look at Blake's face, the instant that she's told to shut up, you can tell that actually really, really hurt her.
And it's at this point I want to remind everybody, do you remember that heart-to-heart that her and RWBY had in Volume 8 of how, Blake, said what she was like when she was younger, but then everything jaded her, but she, looks up to RWBY and, now things are better for her.
Mm-hmm.
In canon, that happened, a day or two ago.
At best. Basically, Blake's entire perception of RWBY as a person is being shattered in real time. And, that...
RWBY, with tears in her eyes, just tells everyone, just don't. Before picking up Crescent Rose and just leaving.
Flying way too far and fast for any of them to keep up with her. She's gone. And Jaune watches the rest of the paper village sink to the bottom of the water. And that's the end. Setting things up to get even darker next time. So there's an underlying message about this in this episode that can be a little difficult to see initially, but the more you think about it, the more it works and makes sense. This episode is basically kind of both it's told through the lens of these derpy little paper people that the audience isn't going to be that emotionally attached to, really. That this entire thing is kind of an allegory for it doesn't really matter how well-intentioned you are, no matter how strong you are, no matter what you do, at points in your life, unspeakable tragedies are just going to happen. And you need to find a way to be able to live with it when it happens. And as we can see, some characters are able to do that better than others. I would actually posit that Jaune is being used specifically as a mirror character to RWBY when it comes to the acceptingness of trauma. Because as it currently stands, thanks to how much time has passed, Jaune has been festering with all of these thoughts for so long, and he built up this huge coping mechanism to try and keep everything going, where he could control everything, make sure everything is fine and good forever, when that's entirely not realistic. It's an unhealthy way to live. And this actually is a behavior we've seen of Jaune since the beginning. It's no secret that he's still never got over Pyrrha's death. It haunted him the entire time we've seen him. It, like, when Weiss almost died and he just, freaked out and said we, can't lose anyone else. Jaune is a person who has a hard time dealing with loss. And it's my personal thought process that we're being shown that for the purpose of RWBY is still at an early enough stage where she can, metaphorically open up the wound so it can heal properly rather than fester like Jaune's trauma has been doing all this time.
Yeah.
Which, again, kind of coincides with my theory of Jaune just not being able to make it out of this because he's the cautionary tale of what guilt and trauma can do to a person in the long term if you don't deal with it in a healthy way. Whereas with RWBY, hopefully, she'll be able to eventually reach a point where she is going to be able to cope with it in a more constructive way and be able to move on with her life more healthfully.
That's the hope. And I've had this thought for a while when it comes to RWBY's inevitable breakdown. So it's always been RWBY who picks up the rest.
Yeah,
and is
not even just her, not even just her team. Everybody.
Yeah, and I've always thought when she inevitably snaps, it's gonna be up to Weiss, Blake, and Yang to pick her up.
It's basically kind of paying it back for all the times that she's helped them.
Yeah.
And that's still very possible. They need to metaphorically and literally step it up.
Yeah. I feel like by the end of this volume, we are gonna see that.
I can only hope.
Yeah, and well, after that scene, I hope we do get a scene of RWBY, apologizing for what she said and being like...
Yeah. Because that's another thing I've been seeing. Okay, you know what? Let's rip the Band-Aid off on this little talking point. I've seen a lot of people basically point the finger and blame just about literally any and every character for this situation happening. Yeah,
okay, so my thought process is no one is in the right and no one is in the wrong.
It's too morally... there's too many shades of gray here. Everybody has their point, but everyone also has their mistake. There is no clear good guy, bad guy, right answer, wrong answer to this situation. To literally point the finger and blame literally anybody right now is to miss the entire point of what's going on right now.
Yeah.
You're literally tossing aside the narrative point of what's going on. None of the characters are in the right or in the wrong. That's what makes it compelling. So, okay. I guess we can sort of get into this. Because it goes back to something I said that I would go back to. And it goes into why I think this is Jaune's ending point a little more strongly. You don't know a lot about Alice in Wonderland, but let me explain something here. Okay, so...
No, there is one part I remember reading about.
Oh, okay, well, I am interested in that.
Okay, so the Rusted Knight is basically the White Knight from Alice in Wonderland, or the Red Knight, whichever it is.
Yeah, to an extent, yes.
And they stayed behind when Alice left.
And it actually goes deeper than that. There is an additional character that Jaune has had telegraphed into his design and motif for a really, really long time. So, there's a character in Alice in Wonderland who, the first time we see them, says they're late. And they rush off to try and get to their appointed destination. And that's ultimately what Alice follows in order to get into it. This character is the White Rabbit.
Oh.
And I feel like you've already realized where I'm kind of going with this. A White Rabbit has kind of been Jaune's whole motif for a very long time. So, when you take into consideration that Jaune is technically both the White Rabbit and the Red Knight, essentially, it almost kind of feels like he's been telegraphed to become a part of this story since the beginning. And if he were to pass on and ascend, he would be rebuilt into a permanent fixture of this story, which one could theorize is almost his destined path. You're really starting to understand why I feel so melancholically confident that do I want Little, the character we like, but comparatively don't have as much emotional attachment to, jump out and say, my purpose is to get them home, and sacrifice itself to get everybody out of here? Sure, I would love for everything to work out significantly better that way, but the way the show has been written, I feel like there has to be some huge, everlasting remembrance impact that this entire volume has left, and it is undeniable that Jaune dying in any capacity would be that. And to conceivably possibly see Jaune sacrifice himself just for the small chance, the small hope that the Team RWBY can go back to Remnant and actually solve these problems, narratively would go a long way to instill a small bit of hope back into RWBY, that at the very bare minimum, even if she can't ultimately win, if she can't defeat Salem and the world ends anyway, at the very least, you have to go down fighting. You can't just roll over and die. In a way, not only would Jaune literally be reborn as a hero in this world, he would die a hero, instilling a newfound sense of hope into the rest of the cast. He would be a hero in every sense of the term, which is literally what he's been trying to become since episode 1. Or 2, whenever he showed up. You get my point.
Yeah.
It's dark as hell, I hate it, but I can't see it go I can't see it go any other way. Plus, that's exactly the kind of emotional knife to the stomach and twist that the RWBY writers are all about.
Yeah, if anything, I feel like that's what's gonna make me cry again. But
it would make me cry.
But this time, tears of sadness.
Like, I admit, okay, so far, one scene, okay, 2 scenes in RWBY have made me cry. One is Pyrrha's death. One is Weiss's near death. If Jaune does go the way that I suspect that he will, even having fully predicted it ahead of time, I have no doubt in my mind it will be the 3rd time this show has made me cry.
And I have also cried a total of twice. The first was Penny's death last season.
Yeah.
Like, it would have been Pyrrha's, but I feel like, you know, with how the Silver Eyes came about, that kind of...
It was such an interesting and whoa, what's going on kind of moment that it sort of brought you out of the sorrow stage for a moment.
Yeah.
If it dwelled on it longer, probably yes. I get that.
And of
Dark
course,
days are ahead, man.
And of course, the second was Blake and Yang's confession.
Yeah. I'd love to be able to shed happy tears in this show, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. I'll tell you that much. So, my general prediction going forward at this exact moment, I believe the next episode probably isn't going to have Weiss, Blake, Yang, or Jaune show up at all. I think it's going to be solely RWBY and Little, and Neo enacting basically her endgame plan. Which would then perhaps bleed into the next one where hopefully they're able to find her and help her. And maybe, get them going a bit more.
Yeah, and then the final episode is going to be all about them getting home.
Yeah. And potentially,
at least
from my perspective,
being
about I guess there is the very possibility that they're going to be in this place for another season or part of a season. I don't personally think so, but it is not impossible. But yeah, so we'll see, man. So there's actually something I wanted to talk about, and it's actually about both Weiss and Blake specifically. I'm actually going to start with Blake.
Yeah, I'm also going to start with a little something.
Yeah, go right ahead. I'm going to talk a lot, so please, go ahead.
I've talked about this before, and this episode solidifies it even more for me, because when the girls were running towards the village, Blake was the one ahead of everybody.
She was.
And when they were going to run off to fight the Jabberwocker, Blake was the one who was like, hey, we won't run this time, let's go.
Yes.
And, when things were tense, she was the one who was trying to, diffuse everything. I feel like, especially now that RWBY's, taken off, I think Blake is going to step up and be, a acting leader for a little bit.
I am going to have to agree. And it's part of why I think that they had Bumblebee take place when and where it did. Because she no longer has that small emotional baggage foible hanging in the back of her brain anymore. Basically, who Blake is, what we are going to always think of as Blake going forward is who she is now in its entirety. So with all of that taken care of, she's just in the best possible mental state to lead in comparison to all of her friends.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to shout out to Blake's method of conflict, because I consider it very relatable in that I personally have gotten in between arguing people, trying to mediate and talk down situations just like that. It very rarely works, but it's what comes to mind to do, And I appreciated seeing another character doing that. Of course, me being the Weiss guy, I always have to have something to say about her. Weiss has very subtly been going through her own dramas in the background. It's not as pronounced because this is obviously the season about RWBY and, to a second degree, Jaune, but very, very notably, you can see in key moments, Weiss confronted with what happened last volume and casually just kind of going, that's really terrible, and just kind of silently trying to walk away from it. It's at that moment in this episode when I saw Weiss again attempting to do something that it dawned on me that there's something very relatable about Weiss and how she personally deals with grief. And the way she does that is In the absence of answers on how to deal with her own personal traumas, she copes by being there and attempting to shoulder the burdens of those that matter to her. You can see it even way back when this volume started. Even though she just fell down, she just saw all of that stuff happen, her home is gone. What was her first actual thing that she said? What was her first real major concern? It was finding the others. It was talking to, it was supporting Blake. That adorable, hilarious cheerleader moment was her supporting Blake through hard times. And Weiss has been doing this for a really long time. She went through a whole bunch of crap. But, when she ran away from her home, and yet what was something that was considered more pressing in her mind? Helping Yang. And almost every time she does, anytime anything bad happens to her, it seems almost like her automatic defense mechanism is to look into a problem that someone close to her has and doing everything she can to try and help that. She was focused on bolstering up Bumblebee and getting them to be happy. And as much as she could, she tried to help RWBY during those brief moments when she could. That's literally how I live my life. I never know what to do when I have personal problems. So, I go all in on trying to help people that matter to me. And it blew my mind to discover this. I just really wanted to bring that up. That I relate with Weiss in a lot of ways that I never anticipated when I started watching this show. That's all. And hopefully that made sense to you, and I wasn't just rambling.
It did.
Okay.
And sorry I've been silent. It's just
no, it's okay.
Trying to listen and even thinking.
Listen and process.
Yeah, trying to process everything.
I get it. I do. And I want all of the girls to be happy. I want them all to be able to do this. And the best possible news that I can come up with, to the best of my ability, is that with RWBY finally letting some of this pain out, she's going to be able to go towards that path towards being able to get better. It's going to be a hard road, but that's just how trauma works. Coming to terms with horrifying life experiences is never easy. But there are ways to be able to adapt and overcome them. And it's my personal hope that, at least in the background, I can see Weiss also being able to open that little bit up and just say, just get a more open tear about everything that took place.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to see her fester in her traumas too. She's just able to hide them under... I don't want to make it seem like she's pretending to care about her friends. That's not it at all.
No.
She loves her friends and she wants to help them legitimately. It's just that's how she's able to basically shrink away from her personal issues, is by trying to help other people with theirs. So I'm hoping that can work out, because those are the three characters I'm worried about the most. I'm worried about RWBY, I'm worried about Jaune, and then I'm worried about Weiss, in that order.
Same.
Because Weiss has been holding on to a very, she's been holding on to that key piece of information this whole time, and the guilt has obviously been all over her face this entire time. It's like, when is there a good time to bring that up?
Yeah,
apparently it wasn't then.
And the fact that that still hasn't been brought up
I must be saving it for when it'll hurt the most.
And there's 3 episodes left. I'm just like, can we just rip the Band-Aid off, please?
Next episode or the one after that?
Ideally next episode.
It has to. I mean, basically, personally, I found that this episode was kind of slept on. I feel like a lot of people just kind of watched it and went, oh, okay, so, goofy little paper star dudes, Jaune's kind of crazy now, blah, 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 and we're setting up RWBY's major actual breakdown. That is all true, but as I feel like I've been making a lot of efforts to show, this episode is a lot deeper than a lot of people, I think, immediately can recognize. And it's important to take everything in properly. But it's undeniable, this is the prelude to the big RWBY break emotionally, essentially. And the only consolation we have on this is the fact that Little is still with her. She's not entirely alone.
Yeah. And, there's also theories about, what exactly Little is. There's the theory that they're Alex, that they're Penny. There's one...
That they are all...
There's one you came up with.
My theory, and this, just for the record, all of these thoughts that I've been having are, well, not every single one, but a good chunk of them are thanks to Nightstar, his own personal theories, and being able to break things down for me and compartmentalize them in my brain so I can properly speak them out. But there is the possibility that Little is essentially kind of a spirit animal to RWBY and is sort of a representative of her past self, and maybe even how RWBY believes that the rest of the world sees her as this adorable little naive creature with a go-getter attitude trying to do its best in this crazy world, but not really knowing how. Because that is Little, and that you could easily describe that as RWBY at the start of the series.
Yeah,
and I mean, it would also harken back to the very specific phrase of that Little said of, to RWBY, Rose is your purpose. So, being RWBY, Rose is Little's purpose? That last speck of innocence that she has left in her? I don't know. Just a theory.
Yeah, which leads me to wonder, does that mean the two are gonna merge?
I don't know. I honestly have no idea.
Or I guess potentially re-merge.
Possibly. It's just as likely that Penny's corpse fell to the ground, got swallowed up by the big tree, and got reconstituted into being Little. Because then it would also explain why, how the Curious Cat said, while they don't have their memories, the heart never really truly forgets. And it would explain why it's so hopelessly devoted to helping RWBY, despite not truly understanding why or how.
Yeah.
That is very much like how Penny was. I could see either of those theories being possible. Maybe it's a third thing.
Yeah, well, I've also heard the theory that Alex is the Jabberwocker, but because the Jabberwocker is in the story,
it was in the book.
That doesn't really work.
Yeah. I am curious about the final answer on Lewis and Alex and how that all works out. Yeah. There's a lot left to see, man.
I also have a theory on the Jabberwocker, and this is something I saw someone bring up.
Sure.
Defeating the Jabberwocker might be the key to getting out. Because after I heard everything about the tree, I thought, okay, so the tree... What if it's keeping the Ever After together? But the only way it can, sustain itself is to absorb, Afterends, ascend them. And that, fuels it to be able to, hold the world together.
It's like a self-contained ecosystem where it creates its own fuel, which then lives, dies, refuels the tree, and it's a never-ending cycle.
Yeah. But the Jabberwocker feeds on that, And, the longer it's around, eating the inhabitants of the Ever After, which then gives less fuel to the tree. Eventually, it will collapse on itself, and the Ever After will be destroyed.
That's totally possible. Because, eventually, the way that this all works out, as long as there's a creature out there that can permanently stop the ascension process, eventually the tree will run out of fuel.
Yeah. So, I guess slaying it, which does happen in Alice in Wonderland, the Jabberwocky, although I think it can only be slain with a certain weapon.
Yeah. Well, it's not... This has never been a one-to-one with Alice in Wonderland. It's inspired.
Yeah. Which I guess would also tie into, Neo having to be, the final obstacle. Especially when you consider she's, made so many extra Jabberwockers, that just speeds up the process.
Right. So she's just made the whole thing exponentially worse. So maybe cutting the branch off of the Jabberwocker and Neo is what's required? Certainly wouldn't hurt things, I'll tell you that much. Anyway, that's what I have to say. This was a hurty episode.
Yeah.
And the more you dwell on it, the more you think on it, the more you really try to get down into the weeds about it, it just becomes sadder and sadder. If you haven't personally, I really would suggest actually, viewers, rewatch this episode, just pick a character and follow their face specifically. Watch their emotions during everything. Start with RWBY and then anybody else you feel like, because you'll be amazed at just how much you can learn about a character's current state of mind by just watching how they react to what's going on around them. That's my recommendation.
And with that, I guess we're done.
I guess so. I'm just gonna tell you now. I don't have a funny little quip to add at the end of this whole thing. It's situation is dark, and I can only imagine it's gonna get darker. But they always say it's darkest before the dawn, so we just have to wait for the light to show.
Yeah, which I still feel like that's gotta happen in episode 10.
That's the hope.
They're able to pick RWBY back up. I still hope there's that apology scene.
Yeah.
And they're able to get back to Remnant, however that ends up being. And then we
one way or another,
10.
They're gonna get home. Yep. One way or another, they're gonna get home. And I can't help but feel that it's going to be incredibly painful.
And I guess the only other thing I could say, after this episode, there's no more trailer shots.
Yep. So, it is as blind as you can possibly be.
Yeah.
We have no idea what to expect. Guess we'll see y'all next time.
Bye.